Don't you hate when assholes have the same name as you? Story of my life. Alright, this story is called Caught by John Wayne Communale. There wasn't anything about this day in particular that made me decide to jerk off. I hadn't been planning it or anything like that, but it just sort of happened. Sadly, like most great things in life that are cut down at their highest and most glorious moment, so also with the fate of my ill-timed session of self-gratification. Here's the deal. At the time of this incident, I was living in a house that had a smaller version of a house in its backyard. This is often referred to as a mother-in-law house, because of the massive public opinion that if you have a mother-in-law, she is in fact so horribly appalling to you that when she is on your property, the only way you can stand her is to stuff her into another house that is small and entirely separate from your own. This particular mother-in-law house consisted of a bedroom, a kitchen, and a bathroom, all smashed up into 400 square feet. This bathroom happened to be the one I used for showering, even though my bedroom and my clothes were actually located in the non-mother-in-law house. I know it sounds complicated, but this is just the way things shook out in this living situation. I had gotten off work that day at 3 o'clock and came home to an empty house. The first thing I wanted to do was take a shower, but then it hit me. I was home alone in the middle of the day. I was gonna jerk off. And I was going to do it with the ferocity that can only come from being home alone in the middle of the day. I went to my room, stripped off all my work clothes, and threw them in the corner where they would remain untouched until morning. I slipped on a pair of basketball shorts, sans underwear, grabbed my laptop, and headed for the shower where my secret sinning would take place. I walked out the back door and crossed the 30 feet of grass on the path that led to the back house. Upon entering, I was struck with a pain in my gut that told me I was going to have to take care of a more pressing matter. And soon, I had to take a shit. I walked into the bathroom, stepped out of my shorts, and plopped my naked ass down on the crapper, still clutching my laptop. Well, I said to myself, cracking open the computer, no reason we can't get the old pump primed while dropping the kids off at the pool. When I first read this, I had to walk away for like 5 minutes. It was too funny. One of the many design anomalies of this back house was the inclusion of a window directly beneath the commode, or directly behind the commode, that allowed the user of said commode to be seen from mid-back up if the window so happened to be open. If you turned just right while doing your business, you could see most of the yard, including the extra wide gate that opened to the driveway. On this particular day, the weather was quite mild, and the window was indeed open. I settled in, cleared my mind, and a few keystrokes later, I had several windows of porn sprayed across the desktop, like the various colors of a Jackson Pollock painting. Now came the hard part, no pun intended, which was deciding just what I was going to watch and for how long. This is more often than not the most time-consuming part of masturbation for people.
I agree.
Or maybe just for me. Either way, getting sucked down an internet porn hole can end up costing you hours or days of your life. And that's on the conservative side. Several very disciplined minutes later, I had previewed a myriad of scenes before landing on one that I decided to take myself to completion with. I'll spare you the details, but the premise was centered around a group of cheerleaders underway to the big game, whose bus breaks down in the middle of nowhere. Needless to say, they need to find a way to pass the time while they wait for help to arrive. And it just so happens that their pantless, big dick bus driver knows just what they can do. On a side note, once the mechanic arrives on the scene, he commences in helping them pass the time as well. At the end, it isn't clear if the bus got fixed or not, but I imagine the doctor wanted to leave that up to the interpretation of the viewer. French porn. I'd settled into the cheerleader sexy conundrum and was right in the middle of what some refer to as the classic pump and dump, when suddenly my concentration was broken by a rattling sound coming from over my shoulder. I stopped mid-pump and slightly turned, being careful to keep the laptop balanced on my knee. I scanned the yard through the open window in search of what was distracting me from my task at hand, so to speak. Nothing. I looked back and forth and back again, but saw nothing. Satisfied with the thoroughness of my search, I turned around to go back to work when I heard it again, and louder. This time I whirled around on the commode, almost dropping the laptop as my eyes landed instantly on the source of the sound. It was coming from the gate. I could clearly see that the latch was being manipulated by someone on the other side trying to get in. The mechanism that opened the gate was truly only accessible from the inside, but could be easily opened by sticking something between the slim gap next to the latch and pushing up until it released and granted entry. While this was convenient for me to enter the backyard without having to go through the house, it didn't exactly provide the safety of keeping unwanted persons from entering as well. There had been stories circulating through the neighborhood recently about people coming into backyards, either by jumping fences or through open gates, and stealing things left out. Even worse, there were some cases where sheds that had not been locked were completely cleaned out. With these thoughts racing through my mind, I momentarily forgot about my masturbatory endeavor and stood up trying to figure out how to deter the would-be thieves from entering my yard. "Hey!" I called out the window, attempting to drop my voice a few octaves in order to sound more menacing. "Hey, who's there? Don't open that gate!" For a moment, the rattling of the latch stopped, and I thought I had thwarted a prowler's evil plan, but the satisfaction was short-lived as I watched the latch jiggle one last time before becoming unhooked from the post. "Hey! Hey!" I called out again in an even lower register than before. "I said don't open that." In mid-sentence, the gate swung open to reveal the culprit. It was my lawn guy, Armando. A wave of relief washed over me when I saw that it was him and not some group of ne'er-do-well bandits meaning to do me harm. I was just about to call out that I was sorry for yelling when I noticed the confused and frightened look on his face. It was then I realized that I was standing in front of an open window, completely naked, with a raging heart erection, which was completely visible to the poor man who was just here to cut my lawn. Armando wore the expression of a man distressed beyond words as he turned his head to the ground and stepped back, closing the gate. "Oh, shit," I said, jumping out of sight. "Sorry, dude, I'll be out there in a minute." I reached for the only article of clothing I had brought with me, my basketball shorts, and pulled them on. However, while they did the job of covering my boner, they didn't do much in the way of hiding it. The thing was still standing at full attention despite all the hullabaloo, only now it was draped in a light and breathable layer of shiny red and gold polyester. Go Rockets! I decided that going out like this was not the best way to make this insanely awkward situation any better, so I did what I thought was best. I began jumping up and down while trying to think unsexy thoughts, hoping that the combination of the two would create a level of flaccidness acceptable to public viewing. Finally, my perseverance paid off, and I had worked my woody down enough to make it appear as though I were not smuggling a lying Pinocchio in my shorts. I dashed out the door across the yard and into the back door of the main house where I saw the check to pay Armando sitting on the table where it sat every week on the day he was to come. I snatched it up and went out to the front yard where he and his men were starting to work. I waved to get his attention as I approached, and he shut off his weed eater while keeping his eyes focused on the ground in front of him. "Hey, man," I said, walking up. "Sorry about all that yelling. There have been some break-ins in the neighborhood, and I forgot you were coming today. You can't be too careful nowadays, right?" Armando nodded, still refusing to make eye contact with me. "Okay, well, anyway, here you go," I said, handing out the check for him to take, which he did while staring at the ground. "Sorry about all that again, man. I'm really sorry. I guess I'll see you next week." With that, I turned around to head back inside, and Armando fired up the weed eater before I was even 3 steps away. Once safely inside, I let the reality of the situation sink in. I had heard about guys being caught jerking off by their moms, their girlfriends, or even their roommates, but never had I heard about someone being caught by their landscaper. Worse than that, though, he didn't really catch me doing anything, since from his vantage point, there was nothing he could see to give him any indication that I was pleasuring myself. The poor guy just showed up to do his job, only to be screamed at by a very naked, very aroused man from an open window. What do you do in this situation? Should I send him a sympathy card or something? Did Hallmark have a section that catered to this sort of thing? I put my hand on the doorknob, about to go back out and try to apologize to Armando again, but quickly thought better of it. Based on his initial reaction, he clearly needed some time to recover, and me going back out to confront him wasn't going to help anything. After careful consideration, I came to the conclusion that there really was only one thing I could do in this situation. I marched myself back out to the outhouse, closed all the blinds, grabbed my laptop, and I finished myself off to the whirring hum of